Breaking right now, more reporting from Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill. He says that there will be some form of virtual meeting tomorrow between President Biden and the House Progressive Caucus, which includes the likes of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, who were very much at odds with President Biden over Gaza and the Palestinian issue, but have been kind of running to his side through all of this. Lots to talk about the age issue and about the pressures on President Biden right now. Let's bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor and also a historian. Karl, always good to have you here. Thank you for joining us right now. I want to start with the question that we raised in the tease, which is, where is Jeff Zients? Usually the Chief of Staff is somebody who is more prominent in all of the discussions that are going on right now. I mean, I did a news search for him, and the first thing that came up was something from February. Then I found something that was more recent about him trying to calm the fears of the staff at the White House. But who's in charge there, by your assessment?
Well, he is. He's the chief of staff, and he's got a much lower profile than his predecessor, Ron Klain. And he's also a lot less political. He's more of a management numbers guy. But yeah, he's in charge of the staff, and each chief of staff tends to have a different MO, and his MO is not politics. But he's in a highly political situation and being forced to take on some big decisions and big assignments and try and corral the congressional support for Biden while it's beginning to weaken. But he's not a very public guy.
Yeah. There's a lot of discussion about Hunter and Jill Biden, that Hunter even is sort of a de facto chief of staff, that he's in a lot of the meetings recently, and that it's the First Lady who is really running things and orchestrating things there. What do you think? What do you say about that?
Well, she's a huge influence on him, Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady. Also, Valerie Biden Owen, his sister, who's played an important role in every campaign he's had since he ran for the county council in Wilmington in like the late 1960s. They play an important role. And then, of course, Hunter Biden, who seems to be, we got news reports that when they went to Camp David, he was the guy who was most emphatic about his father staying in the race. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, is the President of the United States relying upon the advice of his son, who's just been found guilty of lying on a gun application because he was a drug addict? It really, is that the kind of person that that the President of the United States ought to turn to on an important issue like that?
So we're told that Hunter Biden left the White House on July 5th. We know he was there through the 4th of July. These questions, and Jerry Seib writes about this in the Wall Street Journal today, were raised about Ronald Reagan as well. Nancy Reagan was also very instrumental and protective of her husband's time and of his schedule as well. And he was in pretty tough shape before he ran for the second term. What are your thoughts on what we can learn from the questions that were raised about his age and how he ended up doing pretty strong second term?
Yeah. Well, first of all, remember, there's a big difference. Ronald Reagan had a hostile press corps. He handled them deftly. He didn't take it personally, but they were hard on him. Not this press corps. This press corps has seen behind the scenes and has known how bad Biden is, what bad shape Biden is in, and has not pressed him, with a few exceptions, including young Mr. Ducey, Peter Ducey of Fox News. But there's a big difference. And second of all, Reagan was in charge, and we saw it. The American people thought, and one of the reasons that he won a 49-state victory in 1994 was that he was seen as a strong, effective leader. Remember, there were big moments yet to come in the Reagan presidency. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, for example, comes after this. But the difference is Joe Biden has been seen as a weak candidate, a weak president, and ineffective, and lacking the mental acuity and physical stamina to be president. And it's not just since June 30th. More than a majority of the American people felt that way last year. Nearly 2/3 of them feel that way today.
Yeah, and I really think age is a number, and people age very differently. But just as a matter of fact, he was 76 years old, younger than both of these candidates currently are. So we can put that in the mix as well, Karl. Thank you. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Beautiful backdrop there. He's in Santa Barbara.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.